Fantastic. Right. Hello, both of you, and hello, everybody else who's watching the video. Thank you for buying our book, Try This. Today, we're going to be talking about the second key, which is called Experience the Action. And we'll be looking at, well, we'll certainly have time to look at one example. We might even have time to look at two. But before we start looking at key two, have either of you had a chance to have a go at key one, the first key in the book, or are you both still sort of exploring the book and looking at it just before we start?
You'll have to refresh my memory, Tim, because my try this is at school. So
right. Okay. So key one, yeah, have you got it there? It's called Tackle a Problem. It's that one. And sorry, I'll hold it up so you can see. There you go, Tackle a Problem. And the examples are this one from Viv, and it's got a feather. That might, and then there's another one, which is, turn the page.
Yours was the zoo one with the
with the orangutan.
Yeah. We remember that one from last time, don't we, Ulysses?
Yeah. So I don't know if you've had a chance to try those.
No, I haven't. No, I haven't.
There's no expectation. Just
No, it's just that we're sort of asking really at the start of these little sort of planning meetings whether anybody's ever had a go, and in the hope that people might have, but there's no expectation at all that people have. So okay, so we'll launch straight into the second key then. Experience.
Just while you're setting up your slides, Tim, I can tell the two people here that we had quite a good turnout for the New Zealand one this morning your time, and so quite a few teachers did share what they've done with key one, so you might want to have a pop over and have a look at that. And also we've uploaded that to the shared teacher planning space on the website, so if you want some other examples, they're available up on there too. And we do encourage you, if you do have a go with key one, to pop yours in there too, because it's a conversation. It's it's a two-way flow, and we'd love to see what you do with it too.
Yeah, it was quite interesting hearing what people had a go at really, and the different ways that they'd used it. One of the things that came out of that conversation actually was there was somebody who was talking about using the key with rather young children, and then there was somebody else who was talking about using it with older children, and that's something actually that we'll talk about when we look at this key, because both of the examples that Viv and I have written for this key coincidentally are for younger children, but actually there was a really good example of a way of using this key with older children, which we can talk about when we get to that point. The other thing is that key one, which is just, I keep forgetting the names, Viv. I still haven't got to the point where I tackle a problem, and this one, which is experience the action, is it wasn't really, I don't know if it was you were aware of this, Viv, until we started talking about it this morning. But one of the reasons I think that we put it at the beginning, even if we weren't aware of it at the time, was that the first one introduces the children to a teacher in role or an adult in role. So if you think about the creation of the fiction, which is obviously something that we're exploring in great detail in this book, in the first key, it's an opportunity for the children to experience somebody who's in a fiction represented by an adult, which could be the teacher or might be another adult, which is a kind of first step really into dramatic inquiry. And this key, as we talk about it in more detail, you'll see what I'm talking about, is an opportunity for the children to be in the fiction. So the way that I think about this is this idea of casting, where the children are cast in the fiction in role they're kind of themselves, but they're actually representing other people in the fiction, even if that's not explicit. And this key is a very neat and very straightforward way to introduce the children into the fiction and invite them in. So that distinction became really clear this morning when we started talking about it. So just to sort of highlight that up front, really. So I'm going to share a short set. Yeah, sorry, Viv. Go. You're on mute, Viv.
Let me sort that out. Sorry, I'm trying to interrupt you, but I'm muted.
Yeah, you can't. Not if you don't tell me.
Yeah. So just to clarify a little further, in key one, the children are invited into the fiction in the second part, but the opening is one in which the teacher sits in the fiction, the children sit outside, and so yeah, that's a really useful distinction. I do just want to clarify that in the second part of that first key, we do invite the children in. But yeah, it's very interesting, that whole dance in and out of the fiction, and who's in and who's out, and who's being the people and who's thinking about what those people are doing. That dance is something that all these keys explore in different ways. Yeah. And when we were speaking this morning, I said to the other group, when you hear how experience the action works, you might well go, oh, is that it? Because this is probably the absolute simplest key in the book. A really, really good one to start on. So I think that's another reason why it's up the front end of the book. Yeah, carry on, Tim.
Yeah, and I think, you say it's the simplest, and I suppose kind of pedagogically in terms of the process that you're going through. But actually, it's quite. I'm kind of riffing on this really, but it's kind of a complex idea, isn't it? The idea of stepping into a story and being people involved in the creation of a story. And the book start is, I think that's the simple thing about this key. It's because there's a fiction that exists already, so you're not trying to invent a fiction or create a fiction. You and the children just sort of stepping into the fiction. So let's talk about it. Let's go through it then, and we'll look at the example. I'm going to share my screen. So can everybody see that? Right. Let's see if I can make it advance. There we go. So we've just done that. Okay, that's the slides. Okay, so we're going to look at where the wild things are as the example, and the first step from the method is that you read the book up to the point of the story where you're going to invite the children in. So I'm going to switch the share thing to the book itself. If I can do that. This is slick, isn't it? I'm sure that all of you are really impressed with the slickness of my Zoom. Yeah, I'm going to have to stop sharing that because I've completely mucked that up. I'm going to start again. Here we go. There we are. Okay, so this is the book. Are you both familiar with it? You know this, so you know this series. Okay, well, here's a lovely opportunity to experience it again in all its glory. So here's the start of the book, and then all you do in the first step is open the book, and this is the first page, which is obviously a curious thing, full of these leaves and whatnot. And there's the second page, slightly different, and then first piece of text. The night Max wore his wolf suit and made mischief of one kind and another. He is making mischief. And there he is making more mischief. His mother called him Wild Thing. And Max said, I'll eat you up. So he was sent to bed without eating anything. He didn't look very happy. That very night in Max's room, a forest grew. Okay. And grew. And grew until his ceiling hung with vines and the walls became the world all around. And an ocean tumbled by with a private boat for Max, and he sailed night and day. Now, this is the crucial bit, so I'm going to just close the screen for a moment, because in the classroom, you might close the book. And this is the second step. The third step is you say, let's all be Max for a moment and help sail the boat. So let's all be Max for a moment and help sail the boat. And that's the crucial invitation. So just imagine that the children are sat there in front of you and you hold the book up and you've got to that bit and you close the book and you look at them and you say, so let's all be Max for a moment and sail the boat. And that's the invitation to step into the action, to become part of what's going on in the story. So you might say to them, you might follow up with, and this is the plus, I think, if I've got this bit right. Viv wrote this one. She knows this much better than I do. So I always she's laughing because she knows that I always go off in directions that are, don't quite. If I'm doing it wrong, Viv, or wrong, but if I suddenly go way off, you'll promise you'll jump in and say something, won't you? Okay, so I'll just carry on then. You're right if I just carry on. Okay, right. So if I'm talking to you three, and I say, well, let's all be Max sailing the boat. So you might say to them, let's stand up, and they all stand up, and then you say, so let's sail. We're going to need to get the sail up, aren't we? Let's all get the sail, and we all start pulling the sail. So like this, and then you say, right, let's lift the anchor. So we're all pulling on the anchor. And you can imagine that at this point, the children are following your lead and they're looking at you and they're thinking, oh yeah, this is all right, I'll join in. And of course they know how to play, and this is play. So they're all in it, aren't they? And then you might say, and the ship set off into the ocean. Now, so I'm just going to read just to make sure I haven't gone off too far from the planning. So I said, give the instructions, say the words, model the actions. I'm doing it, Viv, I'm doing it. And then you've got it. Then step 6, it says, add the plus factor. So the plus factor. Sorry, Viv, you're going to jump in at this point.
Well, no, you did ask me to. So yes. So in a sense, the book gives you the basic action, doesn't it? We're sailing a boat with Max. And so as a teacher, that gives you a lot of reassurance. If you're not like Tim and you can't think of all those extra lovely things that might happen, let's all be Max sailing the ship, or let's all help Max sail the ship, I think was the way Tim put it. This is the simplicity of the key, is it gives you an action. And in the book, it will usually put that in past tense, like he sailed his boat, and we can flip that into present tense. Let's be Max sailing the boat. It's as simple as changing it from a past tense to a present tense, and then every child I've ever worked with will start being in that. And then for a teacher who for whom that's quite a big step already, the plus factor. So what I do when I'm teaching with this key is I just hold in my head, let's all be plus. So we're doing the let's all be, and then if we don't add the plus, then all we're doing is acting out the story, right? But what Tim does so beautifully and seamlessly as part of the being is he says, we need to get that sail up, don't we? That's not in the book, but it is a little extra inquiry, isn't it? It's got an extra flavor of inquiry. And then I wonder what it's like to get that. Oh, where's that anchor? Can you see how he's doing? Just intuitively, he's doing that plus, and you can do as much as that, or you can go further, which is what Tim does. Let's all be plus plus, really, don't you, Tim? Because for you, it's a launching pad into much more besides. So I'm breaking down. I'm doing what I do in life, really, which is I'm pointing out the things that you're doing in your head so intuitively.
No, thanks for doing that. So what I'm doing, again, it's not, as you say, it's not really in the book, but it's what I do. Is it intuitive? I don't know. It's what I do. Is I think through practice is that I put myself on the boat. So if I imagine myself standing on the boat. So when I say let's all be Max sailing the boat, in my imagination I put myself onto the boat, and then I say, oh well, the sail needs putting up, because I can see the sail, and then you think, oh, the anchor needs lifting, because the boat's going nowhere if you don't lift the anchor. So it's that bit of imagination, I think, that as you say, I just kind of do it instinctively, or just kind of as a matter of practice, really. But because there's only a small amount of us, we could do this. Could we? We could just practice this just for a moment. Okay, all right. So could I ask you all to turn off your mute for a minute, and then you can join me in talking. So this isn't necessarily part of the key, but it could be part of the way that you teach the key.
Could be part of the plus.
But it would be part of the way that you would think about it, and it helps with the development of the plus, and we'll get to the next part of the key, step of the key in a moment. So without just imagine yourself standing on Max's boat. You don't have to think about Max's real boat, just think about a small boat. So I've already said that there's a sail, so that implies that there's a mast. Okay, and then there's an anchor, which implies that there must be a rope if you're going to pull the anchor up. So what other sorts of things might there be on the boat which would involve us doing a piece of some work, something to sail the boat?
Well, I would think about I don't know how is it said, but the thing to direct the boat.
Oh yeah, like the tiller.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So even if you don't know the name of it, and I'm the same, because boats have technical language, don't they, which I don't know about. But I would probably say something like that to the children. So I might say something like, I don't know what it's called, but just grab hold of that thing that steers the boat, and then we'd steer it, you see. Yeah. Or is it like that? Yeah, like, so if your boat, it's sort of more like that. You're sort of sitting in it, aren't you? You're sort of a nice, relaxed kind of way. Viv's is sort of like this. Mine was more sort of tucked under my arm. It doesn't matter. The action is what's important. And the fact that there's variety is good, because we're not talking about the boat. We don't all have to agree that the boat is steered like this or like this or like this. We can all decide. We can all say, oh, well, my boat's just, steered like this. I can sit back and feel relaxed. Right? Great. Because it's an invitation, isn't it?
And I love that, Tim. I love that about the let's all be, because I've never had, when I say let's all be Max on the boat, I've never had a child turn around and say, no, there's only one Max in the story, or right. No, we all have to be on the same boat, and somehow we've all got to be little tiny parts of Max. They don't do that. They will all just be Max, and then you can say Max and talk to all of them, and they'll all talk back. That's a very complicated postmodern idea, right. But that's what's so clever and complicated about that invitation.
Yeah, and it is psychologically really, really complicated. I couldn't possibly explain it, I don't think. not in words that would explain what's going on in people's minds. But it's because it's child's play, we all know how to do it, don't we? That's the amazing thing about this approach, is that it is both incredibly complex and the simplest thing that you can imagine. So, Lisa, what else have we got on this boat then, do you think?
I didn't immediately think of objects. I thought of maybe looking out to the horizon or
Yes,
checking the
cool.
direction of the wind, kind of going like that.
Right. So you've done it both times there. You've done the action. So if you were doing it with the children, you'd say, let's all have a look out through the horizon. Or some of you might have some binoculars, or you might have one of those telescopes, the ones that, I wonder what people can see. Or let's get the direction of the wind, because we need to steer, don't we, Ulysses? You get ready to steer, and then you steer behind the wind or into the wind, is possibly which way you go. And you build up the boatness. That's the important thing. You're building up with the children the sense of being on a boat. And you might say to them, just feel the water. We did this. Do you remember, Lisa, with the Titanic on Monday, where everybody was sort of feeling the boat underneath their feet and the sort of the sea sort of
People were
moving.
naturally rocking back and forth. We were stood in a circle. You hadn't told us to do that, but a couple of people were.
Everybody sort of does it, don't they? Because they sort of feel that. Because when you stand on a boat, you feel that, don't you? And so it's not. Again, this is postmodern idea, I think, Vivid, that it's not the boat. If we looked at the picture in the book of Max's boat, none of this really would make sense, because the boat isn't the boat that we're creating together. That our boat is in our imagination, and it's different. We don't have to define it. We don't have to sort of say, we're all on the boat, so 2 of you at the front and 2 at the back, and we don't have to do any of that. We're just creating the boat.
This is so great. Boatness. And I think I've only just figured this out myself. And this is the difference between this and like acting out or doing the gestures. Right. It's not like, right, it's not important what it looks like. It's important how it evokes it and what it feels like to be there. And it's something in that instruction of it's the difference between let's all be and show me.
Right.
Isn't it? And I think that's only just really landed in my head. And I think when I was talking about our one yesterday, our example involved a dog sort of leaping about. And you can get a little bit bound up in sort of what the gestures are, but it doesn't matter. What matters is the ness of that. I love that wordness, the dogness, the boatness, the swampness. That's what we're let's all be in that ness together is really what that invitation is saying. And your ideas about the plus factor, what the plus factor can do. I've always called it inquiry, but I think I think it's that. Everything you've talked about is inquiry, but from a dramatic perspective, from an aesthetic perspective, it's also building that ness. I love that. Thank you, Tim. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, when you start?
So interesting. We're making discoveries.
Because like we wrote it, and it's like a discovered piece of text, isn't it? We're finding stuff out that we didn't really know was there until you start talking about it, because it's a different process, I suppose, isn't it? Explaining it.
So when you're reaching for that plus, when you're reaching for what that extra thing is that you're going to say, so if I pair it right back to me, I'm much more of a sort of step-by-step teacher than Tim. So if I'm looking at the text is saying sailing the boat, right? Let's all sail the boat, and whatever that looks like, and then it's like, what's the plus going to be? My major tip, and I've included this in the book, is that if you're seeking for a plus in the moment, put your own body into the position. Be in it yourself, because then you suddenly do see the mast. And it's actually quite difficult to think of plus questions at the planning stage. You've kind of got to be in the moment, as you did, Lisa. You'll suddenly go, how are we going to find out what direction the wind is? That's a plus question. And in my framing of that, that's an inquiry question. It's also building the boatness, isn't it? It's doing both of those things. So whatever you need to do in your head to get that. But what I suggested in the book is that we say, you don't say plus to the children. You just do the being, and then you think, oh yeah, I've got to do that plus bit. What's it going to be? You sort of look around in the imagined world and ask a question based in that world. Yeah. And the question is not, show me what that looks like. That's not. It might be, how heavy is your oar? Or it might be, how are we going to find that? Oh, how do we steer this thing? Yeah. Yeah, lovely.
And I think that that's something you mentioned this morning, your last night, was that the language is important. So show me is wrong because it's nothing to do with me. It's not about me. It's the creation of the nurse. And so the let's all be, or let's step into the story, or that let's thing is let us. It's an invitation for us to do it, not show me. So I'm on the outside and you're on the inside. Like that's nothing to do with anything. So let's, and that's why I think the sort of getting up and standing up thing is part of that for me. That's part of that stepping into that that fiction, into that world, that other place. So the next step is what is another plus factor, isn't it, Viv? I've realised this now that I've introduced a first plus factor, and then there's another one coming on, and then there'll be another one. So that's kind of how I interpret this key. So in my imagination, I don't know about the rest of you, but we've set sail. You know, we're on there's Ulysses. He's at the back with the the oar, and Lisa's looking out on the horizon, and we're there we are. We're off. You see, and we're going across the sea. So the next thing that comes to my mind is, what's the weather like? Because if I was at sea, that would bother me, because there are constantly, sailors are always, looking at the weather, aren't they? Because that makes such a difference. So the next plus factor would be, is there anything up in the sky that currently gives you concern? Anything that would make you, a little bit worried about the journey ahead? So Ulysses, just have a look up in the sky. And is there anything up there that gives you, or is it clear blue sky like your background and everything's happy and we can just sail on and not have to worry? Is there anything there?
Oh, well, I think it's pretty clear around here.
Pretty clear. Clear skies ahead.
Just stars and the moon.
Oh, stars! It's nighttime. Awesome. Right, great. So you've added another plus factor. You see, now we've got another one, which is it's nighttime. So we're looking up at the stars. That's amazing, isn't it? I mean, I've never been out in a boat at night, but when you look up at the stars, that must be incredible, don't you think? I think this is something I'm going to get out our just get yours out as well. Do you know anything about the stars? And we're off, you see, and it's he's really there now. Look, he's having a look through. So, I mean, what does anybody know any stars? You might say to the children, and there's this one star that's called the North Star. And that's the one if you're a sailor and you know how to steer yourself, then
if you're in the Northern Hemisphere.
If you're in the Northern Hemisphere, of course. This is a mistake I make all the time, as Viv will tell you. In the Southern Hemisphere, you have your own, I think, don't you? You've got your own.
Well, there's a whole tradition of navigating by the stars down here without instruments, which is incredible.
Well, and that's part, of course, enormously of the story of New Zealand and the habitation of New Zealand. So just to rewind slightly, because I said, is there anything in the sky that might cause you concern? And that's an invitation again, isn't it? Rather than saying, look, oh no, look ahead, there's a terrible storm coming, and try yourself in, and you can do that. And I think actually I might even do that in the book. But another option is to kind of is just to invite the possibility of something and then go with whatever you get. So, by asking that question, is there anything up in the sky, and getting, no, it's just the stars, we've got this whole other thing opening up in front of us, haven't we? Now, it feels, or it might feel, I suppose, that the book is disappearing a little bit. That here we are out in the sky, out in the night, looking up at the stars and navigating and all the rest of it. But it hasn't, because we can just say, just sit back down again. Let's find out what happens next in the story. You see, and then you go back to the book, open the book up with the kids, and this is where we left off. Sorry, I better read what it says. And an ocean tumbled by with a private boat for Max, and he sailed off through the night and day. And there's the night. So it was there, wasn't it? And then, and in and out of weeks, and almost over a year, to where the wild things. And now we've got an island. Can you see that? There's the island coming up. So if we return to the keys, key 7 says, then just as suddenly the wind disappeared and the sea became calm, and we read as before, and then signaled to the students to sit down, pick up the book, and read up to the moment where Max first sees the place where the wild things are. So that's where we're up to. Step 8, as before, encourage the students to enact the action by saying, let's all be. Then prompt a creative response, the plus factor, by saying, eventually, out of the mist, an island appeared, a small island covered in forest with a tall mountain at the center. Let's all see if we can find a safe place to beach the boat. So again, close the book. We got to that bit of the book, and then we're in the book again. And that kind of is it. But that could be honestly a week's work, no problem. When we did this with a class in you have to remember where we were, Viv, were we in Auckland?
You might need to give me a bit more help. Which one did we do? Oh, where the wild things were.
Where the wild things are, yeah.
We were in Auckland, yeah.
Yeah, in a school in Auckland, with a class of what would be reception children, kindergarten, I guess. Are they kindergarten?
They were 5-year-olds, yeah.
So that's slightly older than kindergarten, isn't it? It's the year, whatever that year is anyway. So 5-year-olds. And we got to this point, and we got a big piece of paper out, which is another key further in the book, which I won't go to because that's for another time. And the children started drawing the island and creating the island. And then that was a morning's work, wasn't it, of all the sorts of things happening on the island. So if you didn't want to do the drawing, if you were just sticking with the key though, you might start exploring the island, mightn't you? So if we pulled the boat up on the beach, see, I've gone back to the narrative again, and we pulled the boat up on the beach, and we brought along by some, lovely story quirk, our equipment for exploring the island. What have we got with us, do you think? What are we going to take with us when we go off into the island? Ulysses, what would you have with you? Sorry?
I'd say a lamp.
A lamp. Right. Is it one of those ones that you just hold it so we've got an idea? Oh, a torch. Okay, like one like that. Yeah, well, quite right. Yeah, there might be some dark places on this island. I'm glad you've got the. So, Viv's wearing hers on her head. What about you, Lisa? What have you got along with you?
A spade.
A spade. Oh, right. Why are you bringing along a spade? What's that
about? For some exploring potentially, or to use it as a weapon, or
as a weapon. You think there might be something that we need to defend ourselves from?
Potentially.
Yeah. Well, it's a good thought actually, because this story is called "What the Wild Things." So you never know, we might be encountering some wild things. Also, a spade will be useful digging. Yeah. So have you got any idea what we might be digging for on an island? You might ask the children.
And I really feel as you're doing this, yeah, go on, carry on.
No, I just want to pause this for a second. It's a little teaching point. So did you see what Lisa did when I said what you might dig for? Did you see what you probably didn't even notice what you did? But if you look out for it when you do these things with children, it's a little tiny little prompt. So I'll show you what you did, because I did notice it, because I see this. Yeah, I said, now I wonder what you might be digging for, or something similar, right? And because you hadn't thought of actually had an idea in your head at this point, your eyes did that. They kind of went like that to the side. Did you notice that? They kind of went like that. Now that is a sign that you're thinking. That's a classic sign that you're thinking, right?
Thinking visually.
So it's a kind of the body language, your face saying, I'm thinking. That's what your eyes are doing. Unconsciously, that's what you're doing. So what you do at that point is, you, as a teacher, is that you step in and you turn the inquiry into a general inquiry. So at that point, you've said a spade. I did not anticipate you were going to say a spade. I'll be honest. It was one low down on my list of things that I thought somebody would take with them. So I'm a little bit flummoxed, you see, because I'm thinking, a spade. Why would Lisa bring along a spade? She's going to use it as a weapon. That's an interesting thing. So, but spades are classically used for digging. But you hadn't. So, but then I said, I'm going to ask the question what you might dig for. Now, as soon as I asked that, your eyes went like that. So what you do is you turn it into a general inquiry. As soon as you see that, if you'd have said, "Oh, I'm interested in da da da," then we'd have carried on like that. But because you hesitated and your eyes went to the side, it's an opportunity to say, "You don't have to answer that, Lisa. Now, what sort of things might be?" Just have a listen to some of these ideas. What sort of things do you think, talking to everybody, might we need a spade for? Do you think? So, Viv, what might we need a spade for? And so now you notice now that Lisa came up with the idea. She doesn't have to feel the pressure of having to answer it. I don't have to rely on her answering it, and it's now become a general inquiry, not a specific inquiry. Does that make sense? So
I think
Viv,
that's what this key does, isn't it? It gives you a very specific starting point. Like, let's all be pulling this boat up onto the thing, and then from there your plus is you turn out and you go big. So what might we have in our boat? What might our equipment be? And it makes you think big. And then, you know, even from one individual, I love that. Thank you. I'm going to hold on to that idea. When someone flicks their eyes to the side to think of a specific example, it's also reducing the exposure of that person, isn't it? In a sense, it's saying we're all in this with you. What kinds of you're also speaking aloud the kinds of thinking that she needs to do in her head. You know, if you're trying to think, you're going, well, what kind of things would you dig for on an island? So you're actually helping model the thinking that needs to. There's so much in that. Yeah.
So go on.
I was going to add something too. Again, by looking at something so simple and so simple, we can also talk about the complexity of it. Do you notice how for Tim, the pluses are never, I think I'm right, are never, how are you feeling? What expression is on your face? It's not even what do you think. It might be a case of what do you think might happen next, but I noticed that you often go to equipment. You know, what's the stuff around us, because that's an access point. You know, what stuff is there here? One of the it's not like the whole teaching experience is going to break down if you forget and you go, oh, plus, oh, how does it feel to be arriving at this island? You're just going to find it's not as rich, because if I was doing that, if I said to the kids, okay, let's all be pulling that boat on the up, and I go, oh, I need a plus, and I don't remember about equipment, and I turn around and I go, oh, how does it feel now we've arrived at the Wild Thing Island, which is totally something I would have said before I learned better. All I'm going to get is exciting, isn't it? Or one word answers. Or maybe I'll get some child making a much nicer offer. Like, well, there might be some scary things in the, which isn't really a feeling. It's a much nicer, it's not so we don't tend to use a feelings question for that plus, do we, Tim? We tend to use things that are going to spawn inquiry or spawn a tactile experience in the imagined world, or because I think that's what asking about equipment is. You're saying what have we brought with us? What are our access points to this world?
Well, I think the other thing, as you're talking, I'm thinking about why I don't ask the feelings question. I think because it's not what people do in situations. If you're in a situation, you don't turn like this afternoon. I was watching the football. I was watching my team lose again. Like, I didn't turn to the person next to me and say, how do you feel? Because I know exactly how he felt. He felt gutted, right? And it would be the same in this situation. If we were landing on the island, it's not a natural question to ask people how they feel. What if you do that? I think it takes you out of the fiction. It's an outside type question. It's, you know, how might these people feel as they're landing on the island? Might be as close as I get to it. Yes, Ulysses.
Yeah, several years ago, I worked with a story from Michael Ende called "The Teddy Bear and the Animals and the Other Animals," and I usually go into asking the person whom I was reading the story about the feelings of the teddy bear. And I believe that this way of working and pausing and getting into the action of the story, it digs deeper into the sensation of the moment, rather than just asking about the feelings of the character. So I think it's very valuable for me in a set of working, you know, a line of working towards this kind of interaction with the story.
I think you've just expressed it beautifully. Of course, it's the feeling of the moment that matters, but we access that through the physical sensation of being in the moment. And if you simply ask about the feeling, it's like you're circumventing, you're going around the access through the sensation. So if you're saying, what's that tiller, you know, what's that way of steering the boat, you are getting the body into the sensation of the feeling in order to enact what that feels like and what we think. But if we just go straight to how does it feel now we've arrived at the island, we've missed that sensation of the action of the moment, which you've just expressed really well. I think you explained that beautifully. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not to deny the fact that these people are experiencing something and it's creating emotions or feelings. That's not it at all. That it's the question that Viv was modeling of the teacher saying, how do you feel, or how do they feel, is a kind of an outside question. It's the sort of thing that pulls everybody outside. That I think is the reason perhaps for not doing it. Ulysses, have you got something else to add to that? No. Okay. So I was thinking as you were saying that the closest that I might get to it is I might use the convention that the book has pictures in it. So I might say to the children, let's imagine that we're getting together on the beach. We're taking our stuff off the boat and we're just gathering our stuff together to explore the island. Let's imagine that that's a picture in the book. So let's start getting our stuff together, and in a moment, and Lisa will be familiar with this because we did this on Monday. We worked together on Monday. I'll just go 3, 2, 1, and when I do that, when I get to 3, 2, 1, can I ask you to imagine that we're in a picture in the book? And when we do that, could you ever think about your face and how you look as you're gathering this equipment? I mean, some of us might be a bit anxious about the journey ahead. This is a mysterious island. We don't know what's here. Some of you might have heard some strange noises. Some of you might be excited or, you know, thrilled to be here. Or some of you might wish you weren't, wish you were back on the boat. But I don't know how you'll be feeling, I might say. And then go 3, 2, 1. And then it's an examination of the physicalness, going back to this ness of the feelings, rather than a kind of outside discussion about, because people rarely do that. It's more a kind of people are in the moment gathering their spades and their torches and whatever else they're doing, and then they're thinking about what's ahead. That's probably about as close as I'd get to it.
And the outsideness.
Yeah. Sorry.
The representationness of that is legitimized by the fact that you said it's a picture it might be a picture in the book. And what I'm noticing as we're experiencing this discussion today is how I don't know if you agree, Tim, but with every plus, you have the opportunity to move further away from the source material of the book. Yeah. So if you go back, Lisa, and look at the video of last time's of the New Zealand version of this session, we hugged the book very tightly. We didn't deter a long way from the book. We basically enacted the book with one little plus for each thing. But the more pluses you want to bring to it, the more you want to heighten that inquiry, the more you want to bring in drama conventions. It seems to me, Tim, the more we take it into our world and our boat and our characters, and the less tightly we hug the book. So it's the kind of the teacher's choice, and that's the sense you have as a teacher, is that you've got the book, you can swoosh back to that at any time. And so I think it might be a case of you add pluses as your confidence grows and as your sense of what the children can offer and what you can pick up from what they're offering grows. And it might be that the first few times one does this key, you're really just going, right, let's all be, and then 1 plus, and then back to the book, and let's all be 1 plus and back to the book. And that's certainly how it's written in Try This. Right. But as with all of these keys, there's room to flex and grow and be flexible. And does it strike you, Tim, that the more pluses you add, the more it's our story and not the original story?
Yeah, no, I think that's true, because this whole thing about the equipment and being on the beach and things is nothing really in the book at all. It's just there's a picture of the island and Max's boat, and all of this, the rest of this, is just us plussing and plussing and plussing and adding more and more detail to it. But I think that the great thing about this key, and I mean that sincerely, is that the book is always there to go back to. So if you do find yourself, this can happen quite quickly in these kind of works, can't it? There's a shark, look out everybody, and the kids start inventing things, and then you go, well, hold on, let's find out what happens next. You've always got the book to keep everything on the straight and narrow. So the question you might ask as a plus is, what kinds of things do you think we might find on the island? And then that, in my mind, that would be an activity. The children would go draw pictures of what they might find on the island. And that would be great. And they could find all kinds of things, and dinosaurs and lions and whatever else children that age would expect to find on islands. But as well as all those things, you say, well, now this is what Max saw. And you turn the page and there's the wild things. So the story is always there to guide you, I think, back to the narrative. And I think, I'm not sure, Viv, I think you could probably go, I mean, a person teaching this could probably go quite a long way off, couldn't they? As long as they don't leave the island, I think, or it doesn't become too fantastical, the story will always bring you back, I think.
It's as though we kind of create another story, a parallel one that's our version. Right. Can. I mean, I'll be honest, when I use this key, I don't have that feeling of another parallel story. I have a very clear sense that I'm being the people in the story, and I'm seeing what it's like for them. But your sense of that ness expands so that it's okay. And what I'm experiencing, and I don't know if you feel the same, Lisa and Ulysses, but I don't have a problem as a participant with the fact that we're getting spades out and pulling up our boat on the shore, and there's Max. It's the brain is complex enough to be able to go, okay, I'm not simply acting that story out. We're using that as a springboard for lots. So it's cool, isn't it, to be inside it and to realize that as children they're not going to go, no, hang on, it doesn't say that in the book. They don't. So it's complicated and interesting. Yeah. So take as much plus as you want.
Yeah.
Or follow tightly to the story, whatever works for you and your children.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever had that experience of children just going, it doesn't make sense what we're doing here. It's just like, what happened to Max? And they don't. They just, something happens in children's minds that makes sense of these things. And Max is, if you start to unpack it, it starts to get real complicated, because Max is a kind of shadowy character, isn't he? He's there, but he's just kind of along for the ride, isn't he? And unless you do encounter someone, which is another key, where you personify Max and say, well, let's see what Max would like to do. So I'll be Max for a moment, and then you can talk to Max, can't you? And then you're bringing Max into the story explicitly, aren't you? I'm riffing again, because it's I'm now. This is what happens with these things, is that it starts to inhabit my imagination. So I then start seeing all the different possibilities. So one thing I'd like to do before we go, because we're going to stop in a few minutes, is to get to the book where the wild things are. So I'll just share my screen again, and just to explore that bit of the story. Yeah. So in and out of weeks, where are we up to? And when he came to the place where the wild things are, they roared their terrible roars and gnashed their terrible teeth, rolled their terrible eyes, and showed their terrible claws. So, of course, you close the book and you look at the children and you say, let's all be wild things. Because, of course, you would. And they all get up, and they're all wild things for a little while. And you're looking through your binoculars and you go, oh, goodness me, this place is full of wild things. I hope they're friendly. And they're like that. And you go, okay, let's sit back down again then. And then you're off. And it's so much fun. It's so much fun, because the children, they're inhabiting the book, aren't they? Viv, this morning when you were telling that lovely story with the dog and the frog, and the kids are bounding, and they're, kids love this stuff. It takes them into, you think about, where you can go with this. So the last thing I want to say really is that this book, like the dog and the frog, is really aimed at younger children, although where the wild things are, you could do a good job with older kids with that, no problem. But the thing that came out of the conversation this morning was that there was a teacher there called Jess, and she'd been working with a group of older children in the week before, I think, or recently anyway, and she was exploring a story about two soldiers from the First World War who were in a hole created by a shell, a bomb hole, and these two soldiers were either side of the bomb crater, and the story was about they were from different sides. One was New Zealand, I think, and the other was Turkish. I don't know, but anyway, there were two sides of the two armies, and let's all be would work in that context, because you could say to the children, let's all be the Turkish soldier. Let's imagine it from his side of the crater. If we reached into his pocket of his uniform and we took something out, what might there be? This is the plus. So now, of course, because obviously the kids are the Kiwis, they're New Zealand kids, so they associate themselves with the Kiwi soldier. But by saying let's all be the Turkish soldier, the enemy soldier, it's an opportunity for them to see the same situation but from the other side. And the question of what this soldier carries in his pocket of his uniform is an invitation to humanize him, because it's the same kind of thing that the New Zealand soldier is going to be carrying, isn't it? It'll be a picture of his family, or it will be a Saint Christopher, or it will be something that says we're on opposite sides in this war, but we're both human beings. So it let's all be is not just for little kids. It works I think the examples that we put in the book are both for younger children, and maybe we should do another example for older ones, put it on the website or something like that. But I think Let's All Be would work in. I mean, I don't know the age of the children you work with, Ulysses, but I know, Lisa, it would work in your class as well with the appropriate material. That's the last thing I was going to say, really.
Yeah. So if you have a chance to have a listen to the other recording, we have a little bit longer to talk about some of the pros and the cons, but I think we've covered.
Oh yeah.
We've gone in huge depth here, which is what you always do so well, Tim. You've taken us into into teaching moments and things. So I guess my final question for Lisa and Ulysses would be, could you see yourself using this? Do you have books with lots of action in it that you could imagine having a go with this key?
I'm currently doing the Romans, and I'm doing the Roman Legionnaire, and it was the Roman Legionnaire removing the item from his pocket. And I actually did invite, I don't think I said let's all be, I'm going to hold my hand up and be honest, but I did invite them to go into their own pockets and, oh, what would you take out? And they froze and they showed me I went round and kind of had a look at what they were removing. So it does work. It does work with older children, absolutely.
Yeah. And the advantage of the idea with this key, although it obviously doesn't depend on you having a story, it doesn't sound like you had a storybook, but for those who need a little bit more structure, you had a context there. You had a Roman Legionnaire. You had what the picture book allows, of course, is it sort of writes that context for you. And so my tip would be looking for books that have got action, because obviously that's your starting point. Let's all be in that action. So from what we've shared today, does it sound like one that you might have a go at sometime with a book, do you think? Yeah. Cool. Well, if you do, make sure you share with us, because we love hearing about it, and we love sharing them with other teachers from around the world too. Any questions or thoughts before we wrap up?
I'm good. It's been a really, really good session. It's been nice to listen to the book more in depth, and yeah, it's really, really informative. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for coming, Lisa. Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. I think it's these are wonderful ways to make children, and actually I would say any person, to get agency over their imagination and getting the ownership of the story. And I think that's most valuable. Yeah.
I think this ownership, it's the plus factor of using dramatic inquiry, if you use it that way. I mean, that book is world famous and read by millions for a reason. It's a great story and brilliantly told and brilliantly illustrated. It's great. But if I was a child, I'd want to play it. I'd want to be on the island. I'd want to, be a wild thing. And dramatic inquiry does that. It says, let's all be, let's do that. And I think that's the reason I love this approach so much, is because it allows you, as you say, for the children to take ownership of it, to be in it, to be part of it, to be, more than people reading and looking at it, but actually step into it and inhabit it with their imagination. Cool. All right. So let's. Are we? I'm looking at Viv. Are we good? Shall we say goodbye? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tim. That was fascinating, and thank you to our participants as well.
Yeah. Cheers.
Thank you, guys.
Bye bye.
Thank you so much.
Lovely to see you. Bye bye. Bye bye.